My name is Jennifer Wallace. I'm 40 years old. My father told the physicians I was just his unemployed daughter who lives in a fantasy world, and the sound of his laughter can still be heard in the hospital hallway. As I stood there in my civilian clothes, jeans, a simple gray sweater, and old sneakers, watching my father rule the room as he always had, the fluorescent lights burst overhead. As Dr. Martinez described the condition, her third heart attack in 2 years, and her father was using his customary power to hold court. He never let anyone forget that he had 200 employees and 3 vehicle dealerships spread throughout Nevada. Here, Jennifer has been claiming to be a soldier of some sort, he remarked with that old, contemptuous laugh, without even glancing at me. If you can believe it, 30 years old and still dressing up. In reality, I was 40. However, Dad managed to make everyone around him feel less important, younger and smaller. The nurses tried to be kind but smiled politely, the way people do when they're uncomfortable. I could see the judgment in Dr. Martinez's eyes as he nodded and went on to talk about Mom's treatment options. One more relative who was unable to cope with reality. The problem is that I had spent 15 years attempting to explain my career to them. Not bragging, not vying for attention, just simple family updates. "Jenny, how are things at work?" At Christmas, my sister Melissa would inquire. Additionally, Dad would interrupt me to share anecdotes about his most recent company acquisition whenever I brought up deployments or training exercises. When I attempted to explain that I was unable to prepare Easter supper, Dutoit began innocently enough. "Classified operation," he would roll his eyes and mutter. "More Army games, I suppose." Unlike my siblings, I chose to enlist after high school rather than attend college. Dad made the call, avoiding accountability. He informed people that I was still learning things when I was promoted to sergeant at the age of 22. Perhaps I was finally maturing when I was accepted to officer candidate school, he added. However, his disdain eventually turned into deliberate ignorance. He completely ceased inquiring about my work. He would introduce my brother Marcus as the lawyer at family get-togethers. I'm still in the Army, and my sister is a doctor. I believe when family members inquired about when I did, he would either bring up something else or laugh about how much I enjoyed playing with tanks. No one in my family realized how convoluted the truth was. I had received a commission as a second lieutenant in military intelligence following OCS. In Afghanistan, I analyzed terrorist communications for 3 years. Afterwards, 2 more trained Iraqi security troops. I was a captain overseeing counterintelligence operations throughout the Middle East by the time I was 30. I made a major at age 35 and moved to the Pentagon, where I coordinated interagency information sharing for 4 years. I had worn my Colonel's Eagles last year. Dad wouldn't know. He would cease reading my correspondence after I shared pictures from a ceremony marking my transfer to leadership of an intelligence battalion in 2018. I had given up trying to explain when he looked at them and commented, "Nice costume party, kiddo." Then, what really twisted the knife, though, is this. At one point, he was proud of me. He had walked me around his dealership and introduced me to his staff when I was 8 years old. He would explain that since I had arranged all of my toy troops according to rank and unit, this is my little general. One day she will be the world's leader. He was unable to comprehend that I may be 25 years later. The medical facility turned into our family's temporary residence for the upcoming 3 weeks. Although Mom was stable, we took shifts to provide her with the 24-hour care she required. Throughout the day, Dad would consult with physicians and experts, making choices with the same assurance he used for commercial transactions. Marcus would go over medical records in the evenings with the accuracy of a lawyer. Melissa would use her medical knowledge to explore treatment choices. And I, the unemployed daughter who lived in a fantasy world, would sit quietly in the corner. Jennifer is always free. When there were schedule conflicts, Dad would let the workers know. She doesn't actually work. When I attempted to clarify that my availability was restricted because of work commitments, he would dismiss me. Reserves in the Army or whatever, nothing significant. I wasn't a reserve. I served in the Defense Department while on active service. Strategic Operations Center of the Intelligence Agency. I spent my days working with CIA station directors and briefing senators on assessments of the global danger. I would get encrypted texts on my phone from Langley, from CENTCOM, from field workers in locations I was unable to identify. However, my father thought I was playing games when he noticed me looking at my phone. One Tuesday night in October was the tipping point. Mom had taken a turn for the worse, and her room was occupied by the entire family. The window was being paced by Dad. Melissa was changing Mom's IV as Marcus read medical journals. I was seated next to. When my phone vibrated, she was still holding her hand in bed. My operations officer sent me a priority message. Colonel Wallace SecDef requests that your briefing on Syria be rescheduled for tomorrow at 08:30. The daily briefing of the President's preparation is at 1400. I took a quick look at the message and began thinking about rearranging my calendar. I would have to depart by 6 a.m. to return to Washington, D.C., update the Secretary of Defense on our most recent intelligence from Syria, and then spend the afternoon creating intelligence summaries for the President's daily briefing in the afternoon. Knowing that my analysis could impact decisions that impacted thousands of people was the kind of responsibility that kept me up at night. However, my father lost it when he noticed me examining my phone. He yelled it loud enough for the families of the other patients to notice. "For heaven's sake, Jennifer. You're playing on your phone as your mother is dying. What's wrong with you?" "I'm simply you, Dad. What are you? Looking at Facebook? Are you engaged in gaming? You must be here for your mother, not lost in your own imaginary world, whatever that may be." Marcus raised his gaze from his notebook. "Jen, perhaps put the phone aside. Whatever pastime you are now engaged in is less significant than this." Melissa gave a nod of consent. "Dad, she's right. Jenny has always been somewhat out of touch with reality." The words struck me like a blow to the body. Out of touch with reality, as if the 15 years I'd dedicated to my country were some sort of intricate illusion, coordinating intelligence operations across 3 continents. All of it was fantasy, including the lives I had saved and the classified missions I had organized. I glanced at my family around the room. Dad was giving me that recognizable look of displeasure. Marcus had already dismissed me completely and gone back to his book. Melissa shook her head at my suggestion while rearranging Mom's bedding. Selfishness. And my mother, who was feeble and hardly conscious, opened her eyes and gave me a look that might have been recognition. Perhaps it was only the morphine. I said, "I have to go," silently. Dad laughed. I got up, kissed my mother's forehead, and approached her. "Of course you do. Run away again. That's what you always do when things get real." The door, but I halted and went around. "I need you to comprehend something, Dad. I will provide the Secretary of Defense with an update on intelligence activities in Syria tomorrow morning. I will assist in preparing the materials for the President's daily briefing tomorrow afternoon. In addition, I will deploy to Germany next week to coordinate intelligence sharing with NATO members." "It's not a dream." "That's what I do." He chuckled, the same contemptuous laugh that had followed me. "For 15 years. Yes, Jennifer. I'm having lunch with Elvis, and you're going to brief the President." Marcus snorted. Melissa gave an eye roll. Even the nurse appeared uneasy, as if she were observing a total detachment from reality. I gave a slow nod and left. It took 4 hours to get back to Washington, D.C. The majority of my thoughts were focused on the 8-year-old girl who would be in charge of the future world, and I wondered when her father lost faith in her. Colonel's eagles were shining on my shoulders as I sat in my dress blue uniform in the Pentagon's E-ring the following morning, getting ready to inform Secretary Austin of our most recent intelligence evaluation of southern Syria's Iranian proxy operations. General commanders, senior officials from other agencies, and defense contractors with top-secret clearances crowded the briefing room. I was 40 years old, and arguably the youngest of the 3 colonels in the room. Marcus texted me and my phone buzzed. "Today Mom is doing better." "You're where?" It nearly made me chuckle. Where had I gone? I was presenting intelligence that would guide military operations impacting thousands of American troops while seated 20 feet away from the Secretary of Defense. To my family, however, I was most likely playing video games at home. Following the successful briefing, which led to an increase in I had lunch with a colleague from the State Department who was going to Damascus next month to discuss the allocation of surveillance resources to the area. We talked about security procedures and visa restrictions, the kinds of routine matters that make foreign intelligence collaboration possible, feasible. After that, I assisted in creating intelligence summaries for the president's daily brief for 3 hours in a secure conference room. Every morning, the president receives the PDB, a classified document, comprising the government's most important intelligence evaluations. Threats from the Middle East were the subject of my section, and I paid close attention to a growing scenario in Lebanon that might have an impact on U.S. interests. 6 p.m. At last, I looked at my phone. Dad missed 17 calls. The initial voicemail was standard. Your mother is requesting you, Jennifer. Give up what you're doing and return here. The second was more pressing. We need you at the hospital, Jennifer. I'm not sure what game you're playing. Give me a call back. The third was distinct. There has been a miscommunication of some sort, Jennifer. Would you mind giving me a call? It's crucial. Dad picked up the phone on the first ring when I phoned him back. Jesus Christ, where are you, Jennifer? Dad, I'm in Washington, D.C. I told you that today was my work day. Work? He spoke in an odd, tremulous voice. I have a question for you, Jen, and I need you to tell me the truth. Are you? Do you really work for the government after all? A chilly sensation settled in my abdomen. What, Dad? What happened? A man was present at the hospital today. He inquired about you. What sort of man? Lots of medals, a complete military uniform. He was accompanied by 2 other males who were also in uniform. They sought you out in Mom's room. I shut my eyes. Since I didn't reply to the messages this morning, my operations officer most likely sent someone to see how I was doing. When a top official missed planned communications, it was routine procedure. What was it he said? Dad's voice trailed off as he spoke. He claimed to be trying to find Colonel Wallace. He then showed me a picture of you in uniform after I informed him that there was no colonel present, just my daughter Jennifer, who is unemployed. Between us, there was stillness. Dad, he called you, ma'am. Went on, and he gave the picture a salute. I was at a loss for words. I had spent 15 years trying to reconcile my family and my military life. I attempted to explain what I accomplished, provided pictures and shared anecdotes, but Dad had constructed a wall of dismissal so strong that he had trouble processing even direct evidence. His voice was hardly audible above a whisper as he replied, Dad, the nurse at the desk knew who you were. She claimed she would when I told her what had happened. He searched for you on the internet. She showed me news items and articles. A photo of you and General Milley shaking hands is there. I recalled that picture. After I briefed the joint it was taken. Leaders of China's South China Sea intelligence operations. It had been snapped by someone in the Public Affairs Office and made public as part of a piece about women in top positions in the military. Dad's voice broke as he said, Jenny, are you a colonel indeed? Indeed, Father. Actually, I'm a colonel. More quiet. The man who had come to find you then said, a planned check-in was missed by you. You don't usually reply to operational communications, he said. I was at the hospital with you. I had my phone on quiet. Dad stopped, he said. Paused. You were one of the most significant intelligence officers in the military, he said, briefing senators, generals, and other individuals I can't even fathom. I felt it seemed absurd that tears were beginning to well up. I oversaw intelligence assets in hostile areas, coordinated operations in conflict zones, and briefed heads of state. However, my father's realization of what I did for some reason, living was more difficult than all of that. How come you didn't tell me? He inquired. Dad, I tried. I tried for 15 years. But you never do. I mean, you wear what? As if I'm not significant enough to visit my dying mother while dressed in uniform. I didn't mean for the words to sound harsh, but they were accurate. I wish I had discovered over the years that my family felt more at ease when I appeared normal, so I wore civilian clothes to the hospital. Jenny, Dad said, and I could hear him crying. They stated that when I appeared to be someone they could relate to and ignore. I'm really sorry. I broke at that point. Wearing a uniform that symbolized 15 years of service, I cried as I sat in a secure meeting room in the Pentagon because my father finally thought I was valuable. After 2 days, I returned to Nevada. The physicians were hopeful that Mom would recover because she was stable. Wearing my dress blue uniform with the colonel's eagles, ribbons, and telling badges, I entered her hospital room. My career's tale. I recently returned from a farewell ceremony at Nellis Air Force Base, where I received recognition for organizing a cooperative intelligence operation that successfully broke a significant terrorist network. Dad Huz was seated. When I got there, I was next to Mom's bed. As soon as he saw me, he stood up and studied every inch of my uniform. Afghanistan's Battle Action Badge. The superior defense of my Pentagon assignment earned me a service medal. My early enlisted days, wearing the Experienced Infantryman Badge. From the airborne school, the parachutist takes off. 15 years of service distilled into medal and ribbons. His voice was full of something I had never heard before. And he said, "Jenny, show respect." "Hello, Dad." He approached me gently as if he had never seen me before. Perhaps he was. He said, "I called your commanding officer." I wanted to express my regret for his helpless gestures, for not trusting you, for not standing by you, and for being such an awful dad. He raised a hand as I began to object. He informed me about your deployments, the operations you've commanded, and the life-saving intelligence you've contributed. Dad's voice was growing louder and more confident. He informed me that you were being evaluated for a brigadier general promotion. I didn't correct him because that was classified information. Occasionally, colonels are chosen for the rank of general officer, and occasionally they are not. But I knew I was doing something right since my name was even being considered. Dad went on to say that you might have had a desk job in Washington, D.C. years ago, safely, regular, comfortable hours, yet you continued to volunteer for deployments because that's where you were most needed. I gave a nod. It was accurate. I could have had comfortable assignments for the whole of my career, evaluating intelligence from comfortable offices, but the important job, the real labor, was done in hazardous locations where American interests were at risk. Dad said, "I'm proud of you." Then he took action. Since I was 8 years old, he hadn't done it. He gave me a salute. The most beautiful thing I had ever seen was a civilian salute, unsure and unpracticed. Mom gazed at me in my uniform when she opened her eyes. She grinned. For the first time in weeks, I truly smiled. She murmured, "There's my general." I didn't miss the irony. I've spent the last 15 years trying to gain my family's respect by outlining my achievements, sharing my experiences in the hopes that they will look past their assumptions. However, I discovered that respect cannot be forced or justified. Making your own family sometimes requires a stranger in uniform to show up to a hospital room and ask for Colonel Wallace. Acknowledge your current self. Dad no longer brushes off my work. In fact, he has turned into a bit of a boaster, telling anybody who would listen that his daughter is a high-ranking military intelligence officer who provides detailed briefs to influential figures in Washington. Sometimes it's awkward, but I don't mind. Being overly visible is a pleasant change after being unseen for 15 years. Although it took some time, Marcus and Melissa have also adapted. Marcus now inquires in depth about my work. Melissa is interested in military health and how we manage war injuries because she finds the convergence of law and intelligence fascinating. They're making an effort to comprehend the life I've created outside of their line of sight. However, their approval or acceptance does not constitute a true win. It's the awareness that in their absence, I created something significant. I merited my position, my duties, and my access to the rooms where important choices are made. I took action without their support, without their comprehension, and without their faith. An 8-year-old girl once thought she could take over the world, so I did it. She was correct, it turned out.